Major Kira is one puppet that doesn't like her strings pulled. Romulans and drunk Klingons are visiting the station for a couple days. And Chief O'Brien gets fighting advice from Chief O'Brien. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Right. Hello.
Today we have a very special guest, the writer, Mr. Ethan Calk. How are you?
I am great. How are you guys?
Awesome.
Welcome.
Good.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we are reviewing Season 3 of Deep Space Nine, Episode 17, Visionary, written by, what a surprise, story by writer Ethan Calk.
Story by, yeah. Unfortunately,
Right.
I didn't do the screenplay, but I did do the story.
Yeah, I was told that this is one of the lesser changed episodes from the original story that was written. I cannot confirm that, but maybe you can. Did you notice a ton of changes or a few changes? How subtle or major were they?
From my first draft of the story, it was Odo who was doing the time jumping.
Okay.
And I also, the bad guys were Nausicaans because I thought they were really cool. But they came back and asked for a second, a revision. And they wanted a better, more familiar bad guy.
Sure.
And so we picked the Romulans. And they also thought, well, we've done a whole lot of Odo stories. Let's switch it over to O'Brien because he, hadn't had any really good stuff. The last few episodes, I think, is what their reasoning was. Mm-hmm. So besides switching the bad guys and the main person who's doing the time jumping guy, it was pretty close.
Plus, as everybody knows, I should have mentioned this at the top of the episode, but everybody knows this is Chief Miles O'Brien week that we're celebrating. Lower Decks mentioned that he's the most important person in the history of Starfleet. This is Miles O'Brien week. Dude, Nausicaans and Klingons, that would have been awesome. I love Nausicaans.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Cirroc and I have discussed them once or twice. They're the guys that played Domjot. They go, "Play Domjot, human!" Right, in Tapestry, in the episode Tapestry.
Right.
Actually.
Nice.
What was your inspiration? I'm going to get my Picard Tapestry guy while you tell us what your inspiration for the episode was.
I don't even remember. I mean, it's like 25 years ago, but I just remember kind of like, hey, what if, because that's the way I kind of try to do everything, just kind of hey, what if this happened? So it's like, hey, what if somebody kept jumping into the future and saw the station blow up? And so that was kind of where it came from. I don't know where the first idea came from, actually, but it's just, that's kind of how it went.
So how did you get it, get your idea submitted to the guys over at Deep Space Nine? Like, what was the connection for you and the writers over at DS9?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but,
Perfect.
Next Generation, about middle of the third or fourth season, started accepting scripts from outsiders. And I'm pretty sure Ron Moore and a couple of the other big writers started that way. Well, when I heard that, I went, oh, that's awesome, because I've been a Star Trek fan forever. And I started working on a couple of scripts, and I messed with them for a couple of years and really didn't do much with it. But when they announced that Season 7 was going to be the last Next Generation season, I thought, okay, I better get going. So I worked really hard, and I got a couple of scripts together, and I picked one, and I sent it in. And that was probably a couple of months into the Season 7. And what I didn't realize is that they stopped accepting scripts about 2 weeks after mine got there. And so nothing happened. I figured, okay, I'm going to get this envelope back, no thanks, go away type thing. And about probably 4 months after that, I get this call from somebody at Deep Space Nine. I'm going, why is somebody from Deep Space Nine calling me? And they said, well, we have your script. And, we obviously can't use it, but we like the writing, and we'd like to invite you to come pitch some ideas. And so that's kind of how it went. So I flew out to LA and pitched 4 ideas, I think, the first time, and one of them was the one that turned into Visionary.
Wow. Okay, so we've got to know. Like, we don't want to get into all of them, but
Okay.
what was, can you give us one of the pitches from the Next Generation, just so we have an idea of like what you pitched in that direction?
Oh, the script that I wrote, it had Crusher and a landing party went down to some planet. And when they came back, the transporter filters missed something. And so when she went to the next planet, she was contagious somehow and caused an entire species to go extinct. And then it was her having to live with that, the fact that she's a healer and a doctor, but she caused an entire species to die out.
Wow.
So
that does sound like that is a good Next Generation episode.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe if I sent it in way sooner, it could have been, but I was just messing around and then, turned it in 2 weeks before the deadline.
Ryan, do you know how that conversation would have went between Picard and Crusher?
I know what you're trying to. Well, first of all, here's our Lieutenant Picard. He's getting lost in the green screen here, but that's Lieutenant Picard in his green outfit, with the Nausicaans, and he's like, "Play dumb human," and he's like, "Oh, we don't cheat in Starfleet," or whatever the heck he says. But I know what trying to get. I don't know what Crusher sounds like. It should be like Jean-Luc. Jean-Luc, I did. Beverly, damn it, Beverly, snap out of it, Beverly.
Yeah, I had her wanting to resign from Starfleet, and he talked her out of it.
Perfect.
So
that's really good.
Yeah, cool.
It's a fun one.
I have a question. So when you wrote this episode, because we usually see time travel happen either in the past, in the long away past, the far away past, or the far away future. We very rarely see like somebody time travel into like 3 hours ahead.
5 hours. Yeah,
5 hours ahead. So, what was the logic behind that?
Because the last thing he saw, or second to last, was the station being destroyed. That gave you a really ticking time clock that, oh no, we only have a couple hours to figure this out. If it was 3 weeks from now, there wouldn't have been any danger there, I think. So the tight timeline there was just to create the suspense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in screenwriting, they're always saying, raise the stakes, raise the stakes, and yeah, it's true. You have to have something that's like it's right, right around the corner. It's just right there. You have to address it immediately. Otherwise, it'd be like, oh, we'll address it in a few episodes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the imminent threat was the station blowing up. Which, by the way, I don't know if you got a chance to rewatch this episode, but I love the visual effects of the station blowing up. I thought it was pretty damn accurate.
I actually watched it again last night just to get ready for this.
Cool.
Yeah.
And watched it with my script.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Cirroc, he said he'll be signing that and sending that to our P.O. box, right?
Oh, wow.
No. He's like, no, that's mine.
I can make a copy, whatever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's great.
So I did want to ask though, like because we've seen certain episodes where there's time travel or there's people seeing things in the future. This one was definitely different than any ones I can pull up personally in my Star Trek Rolodex. A lot of times we see some that really remind us of another one. This one didn't have that. I think it's because of just the 5 hours ahead kind of thing. But one thing that was a little different than that is I didn't expect OBrien to be able to see himself when he came. Usually they just like see what's going on, but they can't see him. And not just that, but the other people on the station could see him and interact with him. Bashir was like, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you.
Right.
Awesome, you're here.
Yeah.
The other you just died. Let me give you some advice." That was. I feel like that's kind of what set this episode apart for me personally. Compared to other Star Trek episodes. Do you remember if you had, an actual deliberate decision of, should I have them be able to see him or should I not? Do you remember if there was any of that thought process?
I'm pretty sure that, yes, that was in my original. I couldn't find my original stories at the house or on the computer. Again, that was a long time ago. But I'm pretty sure that that was the original concept. Now, not all of the interactions, a lot of that was done by the writing staff in their breakdown and everything. But yes, it was the intention for him to see himself and maybe interact with himself.
Yeah, I love it when he gives himself advice. Fighting, he's like, Duck, great job, O'Brien. All right, Duck, get him. Anyway, what were you saying, Cirroc? Sorry.
No, I mean, that's exactly what I was going to talk about. Him talking to himself, which is what I think was the part that set it off for me, at least set it differently from other things that I've seen. You usually don't see people interacting with other people, and you really don't see them interacting with themselves. And so I thought that was unusual, especially during the fight scene where he just got beat up, and then he beats the guy who just beat him up. Right. So I kind of like that. It left a whole bunch of paradoxes, that some of which would, if you really sit down, you would, some of the things I was saying, is that possible? Like, is it possible? For example, when the future column, future O'Brien switched with the past O'Brien, and he was kind of like, well, I don't feel the same. That was right. That was one thing that I would say, well, is that even possible? And would the memories he have be able to be carried forward? That
was supposedly an uncredited bit of a rewrite by Ron Moore. So he kind of suggested that, hey, let's do that switch right there at the end. So I don't know what else he rewrote, but that little bit from there to the end, I think, was part of his.
I caught myself saying, oh, that's familiar. I've seen that in another episode. But I was like, oh, wait, that was a later episode. So that was, I believe it was an Enterprise with Trip Tucker. So they were doing something that had already been done in this episode. So this episode may have been the first to do that, to my knowledge, that whole switching of the same person from a different time or the same genetic thing. And I thought it was really cool when they said, they wrote in, how he feels a little weird, like he feels like he doesn't belong. And Star Trek is so good at writing these little one-liners that really help you understand how they're feeling. Like an episode or two before, when Vedic Bareil was saying, like, it feels more like a memory of a touch. Like, that hit me. I was like, I can picture it. I get it. And in this one, he was saying, I don't really feel like I belong. I feel like I'm, whatever he said, like invading somebody else's, place. And it made you think, yeah, that's probably how it would feel. Like you would walk into the bedroom that belongs to you, but it's not really yours. Somebody else was inhabiting that just 5 hours prior.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing I would say that came out, across to me was the fact that there were several tie-ins from previous episodes in this episode. The one glaring one was the dartboard, which we had just seen in the episode before this. And, O'Brien is playing darts with Bashir in the episode before this in the cargo bay, if I'm not mistaken. And now we see the dartboard being, put up and set up in Quarks. And so my question is that something the writers put in to add continuity? Because I can only imagine that you weren't privy to what happened to the episode before.
No, that was the writers. Once I turned in that second draft, I heard absolutely nothing. I saw nothing. I don't even think I got the script. The first time I saw what they did with it, I think, was the night it aired.
Wow.
I might have gotten the script ahead of time, but I really don't recall that. So yeah, that was the writers. And then putting in some of the history that they were talking about when Kira was talking about what happened on the Defiant. That was all them filling in that history that they had done.
I assume that whenever they want to go back and add certain layers of story, there's no way somebody that's pitching could be in on their meetings to know that kind of stuff. So it's almost like you're pitching them, all these ideas with a few placeholders saying, here's what I got, but I'm sure you guys have something that are more relevant. Like, for example, like when you really go deep into the technobabble, I'm like, they can't expect us to know exactly what they want, what kind of technobabble they want us to say. So you just make up a little technobabble, or you even just put in parenthetically technobabble inoculation or something like that, and let them do that kind of stuff.
And especially with the history, because, you know, from the time I pitched to the time they called me and said, hey, we're going to buy the story, was like 4 or 5 months. And then it was another 4 or 5 months before the episode was even shot, or maybe that timeline's a little off, but I think I pitched I sent the script in October, and then, I don't know, it was just a long time between the time I pitched and the time the episode aired. So there's
it's probably October 93 or something like that, because this episode aired in like January, February of 95.
Right. Right. So, or at least that's when I submitted the script, and then the script that got me the pitch. So yeah, there was a long time in between there, and a lot of episodes that I had not seen that were, you know, aired after I pitched. And so, yeah, that's the writing staff putting all that in together.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there's no way you could have known any of that stuff that they hadn't even aired that yet, or maybe even written any of that stuff yet.
That's interesting. And you said you also, when you pitched like 3 or 4 other ideas. So is that what, you go in there and you just kind of lay all of them out, or? Right.
The first time I had all these details. I mean, I had everything detailed out, and I pitched to Renee Echeverria, and he came in and said, okay, well, the way this works, we just want the broad strokes and the general ideas. I went, oh, great. That's not how I prepared. But I shifted, you know, I tried to shift, and I just said, okay, here's what happens. And I think the visionary one was the third one out of that session that I pitched. And it was really, you know, you go in there, you're so nervous, because here I'm just this regular old guy, and here's these Star Trek writers and things like that. And when I pitched the one that was visionary, Renee just kind of sits back, and he thinks, well, what the heck? You know, what's happening? And he goes, yeah, that's cool. I like that. And so it was like, holy cow, you know. So
I definitely try to picture how that pitch goes. Like, you're telling one thing and they go, what else you got? And you give another, And then when you're saying the visionary one or whatever it is, it almost seems like they kind of stop and they're just kind of like, well, hang on a second, let me think. And they start doing all these little calculations. Have we done this before? How would it work? Could it work? Is this some, you know, and they start doing all these things probably very quickly, but you're watching and you're trying to interpret, what should I go to the next one? Do you want more details? Do I need to just shut up for 10 seconds and let you think about it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, basically like talking to a girl for the first time.
Is this working? Or do you want me to leave?
Should I shut up? Am I talking too much?
That's really it.
But, and the nerves. I mean, like you said, you're sitting there with the guys that, you know, you want to be like in some respect, right?
Right.
And that you're fans of, and these are they're the cream of the crop when it comes to that particular subject matter, right?
And it was even worse because I had no idea what LA traffic was like. That was my first time there, and so I got there like 30 minutes early. So I'm sitting in this little outer office just waiting before anything happened. So it's, you know, it was pretty nerve wracking. But it kind of, once you get into it, then you're kind of in the zone and you're okay. And that all my later pitches were kind of like that. But the couple hours or 30 minutes leading up to it is just like, you know. So.
You know, with actors, you know, for us to get an opportunity to do what you did on the acting side, you would have to have representation with a manager or agent.
Right.
Is that something that you had to experience, or is that something you get later, or like what's the process for that?
Star Trek was the only show, and still was the only one ever, that would take outside stuff from outside writers that did not have an agent. And I don't have one. I've been working with a producer that's kind of that we've had this relationship going for a few years now, and some of the other stuff I've written. So I've never had an agent, and Star Trek, because Star Trek did that, is the only reason that I was able to get this episode and the other one aired. made.
There are a lot
produced.
of stories like that Star Trek was kind of for the everyman, or it's kind of, you know, they're kind of like, in a lot of ways, they were like, you know, such a, you know, an open door, democratic, let's hear what everybody has a voice kind of thing, which must have been really cool and empowering for everybody. That, look, everybody just wants a chance. Everybody just wants to say, look, I got a bunch of ideas. If you don't like them, no big deal, but just listen to them, see what I got. And it must be so, you know, fulfilling and rewarding to say, look, I wrote a bunch of things. I gave it a shot. These guys were good enough to listen, and they found something that they liked. And that's got to be a great feeling.
It is. And so few people who pitched or actually had something bought and produced. So I feel very fortunate, very fortunate.
Mm-hmm. So we got to go to our break very quickly. When we come back on the other side, we're going to talk with Ethan some more. We're also going to cover the cutting room floors, the tribuloids that didn't make it. And we had a NAM in this episode. I'm sure, Cirroc, you may have caught it. I was waiting for it the entire episode. I'm like, you know, there's going to be this NAM coming at some point. And they've made us wait till the very end, practically. Anyway, we will get to all that, and we'll be right back on the 7th Rule.